Hello and welcome to the Let's Talk Leadership podcast, the Culture Edit Reloaded. I'm Sandra Patel, founder and CEO of Transition Partners. This season, I'm flying solo as I sit down with international leaders to discuss their leadership journeys and how they have embedded a thriving and positive culture. Hello and welcome back to our Let's Talk Leadership podcast, the Culture Edit. My name is Sandra Patel and I'm delighted to be back recording here today. So today I would love to welcome Phillip White. I shall call you Phil. Phil White?
Phillip.
Phil, yeah, Managing Director at Audacia. So Phil, really pleased. I know we've tried to organise this a couple of times. We've met at a few events and things now, so I'm really keen to I was really looking forward to having you on the podcast and really looking forward to sharing all your insights, your experiences, challenges, journey and future insights and views as well with our listeners and viewers. So just to start with, I think it'd be really good to give everyone a bit of context and just to give us a little bit of background around your journey and in particular, I guess, how it all started for you. But then also in particular, like your journey into leadership and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. I mean, it's mostly an accidental fumble, but yeah. So I started off in software, so I did degrees in software engineering. Moved down south, worked in London, worked in banking, so I spent time working on a trading floor and investment bank. Realised London wasn't for me, so I think it was more trying to find roles outside of London. You know, there's not many roles for people who work in structured derivatives outside of London. Couldn't really find a job that fit. I think the industry I was in, there was a lot of diverse young people doing a lot. And then this is kind of late 90s, early 2000s when there were probably less opportunities for younger people. You know, if you didn't have 10, 15 years experience, you weren't given a huge amount of scope to do stuff. So I think I looked at an opportunity to do, the only way I was going to do it is to do something myself. And I think I quite like the idea of the freedom of it. You know, I didn't have any, people talk about the big jump. You know, I was pretty young. I didn't have anything really hanging over me. So I think I saw it as an opportunity and it just kind of snowballed from there. Fantastic. Definitely didn't start off with a strategy and an exit plan or anything like that.
Yeah. And was that your, because obviously you went to university and was it software engineering or a technical tech-related degree? How, I think it'd be interesting to understand because the times have really changed since then, haven't they? And I think it was a lot more challenging to kind of get that first break and move into tech back then. What advice would you give to your younger self now from that aspect of kind of jumping into a tech and building your career?
I think picking the right degree, I think, is important if you're going to do it. I don't think a degree is a necessity anymore. I think it was definitely, historically it was, you just one way of filtering out. If you have a large set of people, I think the market was slightly shifted then. There were probably more people than roles. So I think you were looking at ways to fold a pile of CVs in half, and if it's like, well, this pile has 2 ones and this pile has firsts, that's an easy way of getting rid of 50%. Whereas now I think there are much more opportunities to get in without having a degree. So I would say if you're going to do a degree and spend the time and put the money in, I pick the right degree. I think there are definitely technical degrees that are there's a lot of shallow technical degrees.
Yeah. And
I think the problem is if you haven't got the real fundamentals, you find that we'll do a slight pivot in what somebody's being expected to do, and it's like, I need another 3-4 years to. So I'd probably say choose wisely if you're going to go down that route. Yeah. But there's just so many choices now with apprenticeships.
I was just going to say that there's so many choices now, isn't there? Even for me, I all I've ever done is recruitment since I finished university. And even back then, I recall, that I couldn't apply for a recruitment position if I didn't, without a degree. They wouldn't consider anyone that didn't have a degree. So when I moved into a leadership role, I was always told if the candidates haven't got degrees, don't consider them. And obviously things have moved on so much since then, and the same with tech, getting into tech. there's so many like different coding courses and academies and things that are worth more. That there's just more value put on those over.
I think if you remember the journey into leadership, I would definitely suggest people focus on being good at what they want to do.
Yeah.
And have
that passion
leadership
and energy around it.
Yeah, and have leadership as a layer on top of that. I think, I'm not a big fan of people going into leadership for leadership's sake and then specialising in something.
Yeah, no, definitely. Fantastic. So, just tell me more about because obviously, we're here to talk about leadership and culture, our experiences and sharing those with others in the view for them to, learn, develop, get some takeaways from this session. So, be really interested to understand what your view is of leadership. What does leadership mean to you? And tell us more about your style and what's worked and what maybe hasn't worked so well.
Yeah, I suppose I've only got my known nose. There are potentially things I'm really bad at. I'm blind to, that I'm not aware of. So I suppose there's kind of three buckets of stuff. There's stuff that I know I used to be not great at. There's stuff that I know I am now not great at. And then there's stuff that I am, reasonable at, I suppose. I mean, I think a big challenge for leaders is knowing when to step in and when to step back. And it's not a black and white approach to it. I think I've frequently been on the wrong side of it, and by that I mean, if you're in a situation with somebody who sees you as their leader, if you step in too soon, the message you're giving is you're not. You may think, hey, I've stepped in, I've saved the day, I've been wonderful, don't worry, I've got this. But the message you've probably sent is, I don't think you're capable, therefore I'm taking the reins off you. Yeah. Or actually, it could be the other way around, where it's like, I think you're amazing, I trust you, I'm going to leave you to solve this yourself, I'm going to let you work this out yourself. And what they're thinking is, I've just been ditched and I'm not being looked after and I'm having to fend for myself and I'm finding this really stressful. So I think knowing where to sit on that line is really important. And I think communication is probably the key there, just speaking to people. I think in terms of, there's some really basic things to good leadership. I think, you talked earlier on about passion. I think passion is a massive one. I think I heard a good analogy is that you can have authority over somebody and make them do things, but it's not the same as getting someone to follow you. And it's very hard to follow people if they haven't got passion and commitment in what they do. I think people do need to be good at what they do. I think you can get past the fluff, and if you realise people don't have the capability or competence, I think that's a big issue. And I think just being, just at its core, I think being a decent human being, because I don't think people actually follow people they don't know, they don't like or trust. You're not going to follow those people. Yeah. I think it's making sure it's clear that if you are asking somebody to do something, it's clear that it's something that you would do in the reverse.
Yeah, I think trust is a big one, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I'd be interested.
And that takes time. It does take time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It takes time to build it, and it can be the smallest thing that can quite easily break it as well, can't it? And then it's really tough regaining trust.
Yeah.
I think what would be interesting to learn more about is, you talked quite a lot about kind of communication and that control and. You could, step in too early or not step in and try and, show that trust and that support element, but then it could still have the reverse effect. Yeah. But I think a lot of that is really kind of, knowing when and how to manage those situations is different for each individual.
Absolutely.
Everyone is different.
Well, for each individual and each situation that individual may find them in. Yeah, so
exactly. What do you do to? Because I think I'm a firm believer of. I don't think you can ever master leadership, but being a kind of true, open, honest leader is aided by really understanding your people and what drives them, what motivates them, how to get the best out of, bring out the best version of themselves under your leadership. What do you have any kind of specific ways, tools that you do that other than the kind of usuals of getting to know someone as well as you can do? Is there anything?
So I think I definitely, and it's something that I've struggled with as we've got bigger. I'm definitely usual get to know, catch and speak to. I'm a person to person. I think other directors are probably stronger at making sure there are platforms for communicating things. It's simple stuff, running pulse surveys, sending out emails, arranging things, whereas I'm very much ad hoc. I haven't seen them in 2 weeks, I'm going to go and ask them how they are. And it's difficult because it doesn't necessarily scale, but that goes back to the culture of, if you do that for the people that report to you, you should kind of, I asked you how you are, I expect you to kind of pass that down the chain such that everyone's been spoken to.
Yeah. Fantastic. And how's your approach, like day-to-day approach of managing your people, your direct people?
I think one of the big things that I used to be quite bad at is I think it's probably from the background I come from. I quite like the constant element of chaos. I think I react.
Yeah, me too.
I don't really get stressed, or I don't, not necessarily aware when I'm getting stressed. I work well when it's busy and there's pressure. And I think what I realised is people loved coming on the journey and working in that type of environment for maybe a week. But after 2 or 3 weeks, they were burnt out. By 6 months, a year, they were just exhausted. So I definitely changed the way in which I've definitely still relatively slowed down a bit. Still marginally chaotic.
How did you do that? Any
conscious effort?
That?
Conscious effort.
Yeah. I think it's something that I was exactly the same, Phil, and I feel like, particularly from my own personal journey, that it's something that I have to work on consistently, almost daily, because it's almost like a learned behaviour, isn't it? It's part of your DNA, your characteristic. Like, I don't think it's something that you can necessarily, something that you're not always aware of as well. Like, it's in your subconscious. So I've found that I've had to work on it consistently.
But I mean, I still think there is a time and a place for it. There is a time and a place for things that need to get done quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you, on the flip side, what do you look for in your leaders? Like, when you're hiring your leadership team, what do you look for?
It's this. I mean, I suppose when we talk about leaders, hiring, bringing in leaders, there's two types. There's people internally and people externally. I mean, the internal ones are easier because you get to see all the attributes that you look for, and it's extremely hard when you're bringing new people into. Obviously, I mean, what it's like when you bring somebody in at a senior level of a business. They're not just doing that function. They have the ability to, cause massive disruption all the way down. Yeah. So I'm always really nervous about people at that level. But I think it's the same checklist. It's are they really passionate about what they're doing? Are they really competent? Are they gonna take ownership of stuff? A big thing around ownership. I always explain this to people. It's saying, if this is your responsibility and you stand up and walk out at 5:30 on a Friday, people are naturally going to be very unhappy about the fact you just walked out at 5:30 on a Friday. And the solution is not, therefore, to stay till 10 o'clock on a Friday. Is to put your hand in the air at 2 o'clock on Thursday saying, you should be aware this isn't going to be ready by end of day Friday, not just assume it's someone else's problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And when does, in your opinion, because I guess this brings us on nicely to one of my next questions, when does a confident leader become an arrogant leader?
So this is a difficult. So I've struggled with a balance. Not that I've. Sorry, let me rephrase this. I naturally avoid doing anything that has my name on it normally. So any type of award, best lead, I avoid all of them and do everything through the business. I think primarily because as we were growing, you don't want the focus to be on you. You want the focus to be on the business. But then I've learned that actually, the bigger we've got, and even big corporates we deal with, they want to know you, because you are effectively, if you trickle up through the culture and the values, if you're a director of that business, you're the driving force behind all of it. So people do want to know about you. They want to know you exist, that you're a real person, and that you align with all of the values that you shout about on your website. But it's a dangerous one, isn't it? About being confident. How do you use self-promotion as a tool to raise awareness and promote an organisation without, drifting into the world of self-idolatry and just going off on one with one man band as a giant personal marketing campaign. It's a difficult one. Yeah, it's a difficult one.
It's a difficult one to balance, isn't it? Absolutely. Especially, I guess for your position as well, with you externally facing out as well, and having to work on your brand and presence from that point of view.
Because you want people, because it's difficult. You go. You are going to have to go. You do have to use words like "I am the best" and "we are the best," and it just always feels uncomfortable. But if you don't, if someone else walks into the room and they go, "Well, we are the best," they'll be like, "Well, they said the best, Phil didn't."
Yeah,
it's tricky.
No, exactly. It is, and the tech industry is obviously constantly evolving. I've been in the industry for 21, 22 years now. You've obviously been in it for a long time as well. So I'd be really interested to share, particularly at the minute, it's quite I don't know what your experiences are within Audacia, but at the minute, the market is just really, it's weird. I don't know how else to describe it really. Like, it's very up and down. What do you think is the biggest change that is due to come to the industry, and when? Like, what are your predictions around that? I'd be really interested to hear.
So I don't think it's necessarily a big change just for our, but I think, it's under a lot of buzz at the moment with things like ChatGPT, but I think would you a step change around AI, in technologies around there. I think we're seeing a convergence of lots of different things suddenly come to the fore. You've seen Google kind of create their own, 7 years ago, attention is all you need. They created a paper around these transformer algorithms, and all these large language models have hopped on the back of them, and OpenAI is just, set the world on fire. So I think, because there are so many industrial applications where, I think a lot of the time, we've had it before where we've had, hundreds of thousands of pounds in budgets for machine learning projects years ago, where they're like, I want to invest in this machine learning project, and I was, it's brilliant. What for? And I'm like, well, I don't know. You tell me. Like, this, I just need a budget spent around this area. Whereas now, I just feel like there's a bit of alignment in, I don't know, kind of the theory moving into practice, the practice requiring certain technologies, big advances in cloud computing. There just seems to be, all the jigsaw pieces seems to be falling together at the moment. And I think, do I think that it is going to be the end of job roles? Maybe, the common one here is around customer support, but you hear lawyers going to get wiped out. I heard a brilliant statement that was, lawyers aren't going to be replaced by AI. Lawyers that don't use AI will be replaced by lawyers that do use AI. So I think the big things that people...
Yeah,
sorry,
go on, sorry.
No, you go.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think there's a delay on the line, isn't there? I think I was just going to agree that, I don't think it's going to be a case of AI replacing a huge amount of workforce. It's if people don't embrace the use of new technology and move with the times, then people may get left behind. Which I think has been an ever kind of evolving situation within the industry,
and also adapt to the fact that people are engaging with it. We've got everybody here using it, from creating letters, creating emails, creating content, code generation. We are still it's creating conversations that need to be had around security, IP. Where's this coming from? Who owns this? Did we generate it? So there's a lot of questions going to get thrown to the forefront pretty quickly.
Yeah. Cool. And what's your biggest leadership lesson that you've learned over the last sort of, in the last sort of 10 years? You'd have to dig deep on that one.
I think, I suppose the realization I had is that, I subscribe to a lot of leadership things. So I'm a member of a group. I don't know if you've heard of Vistage. I'm a member of the so I'm a member of the CEO group, Vistage. And you do all of this training, and you get, these are all things you can do with culture and people and process improvement. And then it's very hard then to come back in, and when, you go straight back into work the next day and there's a million other things you need to do. And trying to push all of those learnings down through, it's quite challenging. And then, I think it was maybe 4 years ago, I think we put 2 other directors, trying to spread the load and put them into this. And this is, it's not cheap. I think it's 10 grand a head per year, so it's not cheap. It's something we deliberately put money into. But that was something I probably left longer than I should, because you come in on a day and you realise that we've implemented a thing, and it's like, I've read about that thing, and it's because I was used to seeing if there was any big changes in the business because I'd done them, and now I'm finding that there are bigger changes being implemented faster and better by people that aren't me. Because I've given them access to the things that I was attending and then just not distributing.
Yeah, I think that's a common challenge, isn't it? And it can be quite difficult to get it right. I'm the same. I'll go to these kind of like all-day conferences and events where I'm around other business owners and leaders, and I come back to the office now, or I'll come back the next day and I'm like really kind of like geared up, and I'm like, I want to do this and this, and it's just you've then got your day job, you've got your list is longer than your arm of other business priorities, and it is difficult to implement them. And I do think it is about trying to get that balance right, isn't it, of having other people in the business that are dedicated, have got that responsibility to take some of the ownership and of those things away from us. But it's
just knowing the time. It's knowing the time to get those people in, and it's knowing the time to get those people in. It's knowing the time to get those people that you have got to start doing those things. Yeah. You're never going to get it lined up perfectly.
No. Fantastic. And what's your what do you read books? I always ask. I like to ask about recommendations, or any kind of really useful resources, content around leadership that you might be able to recommend to our listeners.
So I'm a big fan of audiobooks, probably more audiobooks than normal. Occasionally a book on holiday, but definitely a big fan of audiobooks. And they're probably, so I suppose, on the work side of things. There's some leadership ones, like the Simon Sinek books, the Why Leaders Eat Last type books. I do like a lot of the behavioural economics books. So the Freakonomics, Kahneman's Think Fast, Think Slow, the other ones, Misbehaving, Richard Taylor, I think it was. Inside the Nudge Unit is a really good book. So that's basically how the Conservative Party created a set of people to use kind of behavioural influences. So these are classic things like, instead of telling somebody, you're going to get £100 fine for not putting your self-assessment return in, they say, are you aware that you are in, 0.01% of society? And that fear of not being in part of an inclusive society, the impact on these people's psychology is much more powerful than a £100 fine. So I think that's fascinating, a lot of that side of stuff. Apart from that, I do like kind of technology books, classics like Hatching Twitter. There's a really good one on culture by the Zappos founder, Delivering Happiness, I think it's called. And then one of my favourites is the story which has been in the news recently about Elizabeth Holmes, who founded Theranos. I don't know if you've heard of Theranos. The kind of scam blood testing. They were meant to do pinprick blood sample, but they were being watered down, stuck in Siemens machines. Bad Blood by John Carreyrou, who was a New York Times journalist that broke it. It's a brilliant book.
Interesting. I might have to look at a couple of those. I'd like the sound of that culture one as well, Delivering Happiness.
Yeah.
It's always a tough one, I find, with culture. And actually, it'd be interesting to hear a little bit about, before we finish, is hear a little bit about the culture at Audacia. And if there's anything that you've implemented that you think is, that's worked well, that others could utilise, anything that that you'd like to pass on from that point of view.
Getting an external person to come in and do some work around our culture and our values. I think when you're smaller, it's a lot easier to sit in a room together and define what you think your culture and your values are. But as you get bigger, your culture kind of takes on a life of its own. So having somebody come in, and it was something as simple as, one of the exercises with people with small Play-Doh, creating models out of Play-Doh to describe how they saw their role, how they saw the business, their version of a vision from their perspective. And it kicked out a set of values for the business and I think it's important that we did do a really good job of not just producing them and forgetting about them. You get them referenced in board meetings by, one of our key things is, should we do this? And it'll come back in a board meeting going, well, hang on a second, that's kind of contrary to one of our core values. So we're not as strong as some people who kind of live every decision and every hire and every fire based on a value. We're not there, but we're definitely aware of them and constantly reference them when we're making decisions. So I think that's important, because I was just going to say, I can't remember who it was. There was someone said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Peter Drucker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I agree. I think it's important that, once it's been defined, that you do refer back to the values and, the strategy that you've created, because you're not going to have, you're not going to get buy-in otherwise, and it just gets forgotten about, doesn't it? And it's very difficult to withhold it throughout the organisation, which I think is where a lot of people fall down. I've spoken to other company owners and MDs and CEOs that have done the same, and they've spent a fortune on using a consultancy, and have felt that they wasted their money. But I think quite often it's that lack of follow through and continuous implementation into the business on a regular basis, which is where it can fall down.
Absolutely, yeah.
Fantastic, brilliant. So if any of our listeners wanted to get in touch with you, we've had a number of people on these podcasts before where we've had listeners, viewers just wanting to find out a bit more about particular things that have been discussed, or maybe even mentoring opportunities, anything. Someone just might want to pick your brains about something, run an idea past you. If anyone wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to contact you?
I think contact the business. If you contact info@audacia.co.uk and you reference this podcast, it'll definitely get forwarded on to me.
Cool, fantastic, brilliant. Great, well, thank you very much for your time today, for sharing your valuable experience and your talking more about your journey. It's been really interesting. I'm definitely going to go away and read at least one of the books you recommended. So thank you for that, and I look forward to speaking to you again.
Brilliant, thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to our latest Let's Talk Leadership, the Culture Edit Reloaded podcast. If you are a leader interested in being on the hot seat, contact me via LinkedIn. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Take care and see you all soon.